everyone focuses on the first milestones with kids, but you don't realize when the lasts happened until they're not happening anymore. And going through the second time around with the new one, realizing just how many times we're like, I didn't realize when the last time my son wanted to cuddle was, and being able to appreciate that more. So the big focus is not missing it second go around, but also realizing that there's more moments with the oldest to take advantage of and not let them go before it's too late.
John, welcome back to the Modern Masculinity Podcast. It's great to have you back again.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back. Appreciate the invite.
It's so fun getting to have these conversations again, because I mentioned it before we hopped on that so much has changed and so much has stayed the same. So I'll sort of throw that question to you. Since our first recording, what's changed for you and what's been the same?
I mean, the biggest change at this point would be having a new baby. He'll be 10 months in a couple days. It's been very different this go around, having a baby to deal with in my 40s versus 30s with our oldest. In addition to no two kids are the same. So trying to figure out, is it hard because he's different, or is it hard because we're older and have more things on our plate, more expectations of us beyond just parenting? Definitely a big difference there. What's the same is we're still working on building up our clientele base in the studio, trying to add more coaches onto my staff to be able to impact more lives.
Yeah, I told him, and I've talked about this much more early on in the show, but it's worth mentioning again that raising one kid is like playing a video game on normal, right? For like back in Madden, it would have been like, I think it was like we went from rookie to like pro mode, right? It was like you're playing pro and like you can win, like the score might be close and you're winning some games. Having two kids is like playing like on all Madden or like all whatever, because you're outnumbered. You're outnumbered essentially, right? It seems like it's 2-on-2 sometimes, but it's not the same, and it is an exponential sort of difference in how much harder it is. It's not sort of a linear sort of progression there. So I'll say that to you. And also, is being older, is that something like, could it be that? Is that something worth thinking about and preparing or working around and towards?
I mean, in older, I guess there's kind of two aspects to it. One, just obviously being older, the sleepless nights, the constant stress and drain of dealing with a kid who's maybe upset all the time. It's harder to bounce back and recover from than what I remember the first go around when I was in my early 30s. But there's also the other aspect, and I've talked with my wife about this, where we each have a lot more going on our plate than what we did the first go around. When our oldest was born, pretty much made the decision where I would take my moonlighting training and just go into fully independent with that. But I was only working in the evenings, so I was free to deal with everything, raising him and taking care of the house during the day. She'd get off work, I'd go train clients, and it was a pretty easy tag team effort. Whereas now I've got an entire business, I've got employees that are dependent upon me being able to focus and produce for the business, because otherwise they don't have clients to train and they suffer. It, Meanwhile, I still got to make sure everything's taken care of at home, but now there's more to take care of because there's two kids, not just the one, and you're trying to give attention to both, but they need different types, so you can't even double it up that much.
And kids are so different. I think people can ascribe to whatever sort of personality tests that they identify with, whether it's Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram or whatever. But I was plugging mine into an AI sort of thing because I was just at my wit's end. Like we come home from the after school from Boys and Girls Club, and they are just trying to duke it out in the backyard. I mean, they're coming to blows sometimes, and I'm sitting in this And I'm wondering because it's like there's this pattern. And so I looked in and I threw all of it into the AI and sort of their personalities and such. And then it was like, oh, yeah, this totally makes sense. These are two totally different people who operate totally differently. And they've essentially they're forced into this confined space all the time, every day, and have to deal with each other whether or not they want to or not. And so I have some compassion for them. And also I was like, I need solutions, or we need to change, or like we've had a number of conversations with them because it's just like, guys, you guys got to figure out a way to coexist. Like you guys are going to be, I think one of my daughter was like, I don't want him as my brother anymore. And I'm like, you're stuck. You are stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably the one benefit of having such a big age gap between the two. We haven't hit major sibling squabbles, rivalries like that. I would say with a big challenge that always more apparent to me is having the younger one now realizing everyone focuses on the first milestones with kids, but you don't realize when the lasts happened until they're not happening anymore. And going through the second time around with the new one, realizing just how many times we're like, I didn't realize when the last time my son wanted to cuddle was, and being able to appreciate that more. So the big focus is not missing it the second go around, but also realizing that there's more moments with the oldest to take advantage of and not let them go before it's too late.
Yeah, that saying of like the days are long but the years are short has been really relating to that, mostly because the house is a mess. And I'm like, I felt like the whole weekend all we did was just clean, and then on Monday it was like, did anything happen here? And so I've got to find grace and also realize that there are seasons to it as well, and sort of finding and appreciating the beauty amidst all of the dishes perhaps. But it is a active process that doesn't happen on its own. Talk to me about longevity, because I think one of the things I was excited about talking to you, and it's sort of I think you're getting put through the ringer yourself, I would imagine, so that you can sort of help your clients in the future. But longevity has been this sort of, maybe it's a buzzword, but I would imagine that as people are getting older and they're getting into their 50s or 60s, nobody thought about health span, right? Nobody thought about like how you're living into it. But I would imagine that's something that you're dealing a lot with. What are your thoughts on that, and how you're sort of having to live that again, being a dad and sleepless nights and all the things?
Yeah, definitely more on my mind for two aspects of it. One, the here and now, and the aspect of being able to stay healthy and fit enough to recover as effectively as possible on nights where I'm only getting 2, 4 hours of sleep because what's going on with the baby. But also in the aspect of I'm 42 and I have a 10-month old. If he doesn't have a baby until when he was my age, when I had my first, I'm going to be 72, 73 when he has his first kid. So being able to not just last, but actually function. And that's the key aspect where our lifespans have gone up, but our health spans have stayed relatively the same, if not decreased. And what I mean by that is like modern medicine allows you to live longer because you don't die from whatever ailment or disease that comes up. But the problem is everyone's still developing a lot of these diseases at around the same point in time, which tends to be somewhere between 40 to 60, depending upon how severe the causes are, either because of genetics, lifestyle choices, environmental exposure, what have you. So, what we try and emphasize and focus on is how can we compress that health span to match lifespan as much as possible. So we're not just living longer, but in basic misery of coping through disease, that extra 1, 2, 3 decades of life that medicine gives us. and being able to actually function, do the things that we want to do, maintain our independence rather than being stuck in a home, and actually participate in our children and grandchildren's lives.
Yeah. What's interesting is that as you're talking about it, it's something that is very easy to sort of put out into the future and go, "Oh, I will deal with it then." Right? But I think that's exactly the opposite of what is the reality, because it's like when you get to then, it's almost too late to start dealing with it. And the stuff we do now is actually what's going to make then better, easier, or even possible.
Exactly. And that's one of the real challenges is that there's not enough education that most of the diseases that we're dealing with in old age now are metabolic related diseases, that the groundwork is being laid in our late 20s, our 30s, and early 40s. And if you're not being proactive, by the time you get a diagnosis, you're behind the ball and trying to play catch up rather than actually being preventative at that point. And it's a much harder game to win versus being preventative, being mindful, and taking care of your body and your health from the get go to lay a better groundwork for your future.
It's always interesting that my parents' generation, and it's nice to see them coming around, because my mom used to be someone who the concept of what she ate and and that affecting how she felt was just, there was a total disconnect there. And it's weird that they were able to get the hood drawn over them so quickly, because it's like, what did you think was going to happen by shoving all of this crazy stuff down your, where did you think it went? Right? You know what I mean? But it's nice to see them sort of coming around. And also, I think that there is a lot of like, there's the next step, because it's okay. We are what we eat. And people used to think that was like an old saying, but like, no, that's true. Okay, great. Okay, so eat healthier. Okay, great. That's helpful. Got it. But I think a lot of people are like, okay, what does that mean? Or how do I do that? Or how do I do that in a practical sense? Because when you talk about mitochondria and it being like all these sort of things, I think that there's another bit of nuance that is really, I think, important to the conversation, so that people understand it's not, yes, eat your vegetables, yes, cut out processed food, but that's sort of the basics, right? Like that's sort of getting us to ground level. If we really want to be optimal, there are some other things that can get us there.
There are, but I mean, there's a lot to be said for if you're eating primarily whole food ingredient nutrition, doing strength training 2 to 3 days a week, and then moving your body in another form every day for at least 30 cumulative minutes, that's going to set you up for pretty good health well into your late life without having to get overly obsessive with a lot of the other sciences, extremes, different, what's the word, spa type techniques and things of that nature. Those things can help, those things can optimize, but like just those basics go a long way in getting people on the right track with it. And unfortunately, those basics are highly ignored.
As I'm sort of thinking about the question, it's like, A, they're sort of sexy, but then also it's really just ignoring I guess it's trying to allow people to cheat, sort of, right? If I do all these things, can I still eat my Oreos? If I do all these things, can I still go out on the weekends and drink whatever? Or those types of things. When, to your point, just getting back to the basics is probably going to fix most of the issues that we're running into.
100%. And that's definitely been one of the big things I've seen the past couple of years with the introduction of the GLP-1s into the market. People mistakenly look at it as a easy button cheat code, not understanding that you still need to do the foundational habits to get the most supreme benefit out of it and to mitigate the potential hazards that people see with it. I know there's a lot of scare information about people with people's hair falling out, bone density issues, muscle loss, things of that nature. Whereas if you're focusing on protein forward, heavy vegetable diet for your nutrients, your strength training 2 to 3 days a week, and you're moving your body every day, we don't see those negative effects come with it. And you're actually losing just fat instead of fat and muscle as part of your weight loss journey, making you more metabolically effective to keep the weight off and less dependent upon the medication to do it for you.
Yeah. What has been your experience and what are your thoughts on all of the peptides? And I guess that's a large enough branch to have a whole episode, but what's been your thoughts and perspective on those?
They're all good, effective tools, but the base work has to be there first. What these are meant to do is help amplify what's going on, or in the case like GLP-1s, to make it easier to make the decisions that you need to make. And what I mean by that is everyone focuses on the GLP-1 and aspect of appetite suppression, which is phenomenal for a lot of people who have struggled with that through with their dieting. The idea, though, isn't that you just let it make you eat less of whatever junk you were eating before, is that you use it to let it make it easier to make good choices in your nutrition, to create healthier habits as a foundation for your life going forward. So when it's time to come off of it, it's you've already laid the groundwork to be successful with these new habits, with the new nutrition things. So even though your appetite increases, you're used to eating better foods. So the likelihood of overeating to a point to where you're gaining weight again becomes marginalized because it's harder to overconsume whole ingredient natural foods at a point to where you're going to put on massive amounts of weight.
It seems like, I guess it's with anything, right? With any sort of modality or technique, you're trying to fix something and you're trying to put sort of this band-aid over whatever. But in any sort of change, I mean, there has to be a change at the root. I mean, there has to be something, an identity shift that people sort of go through that's going to make it sustainable because time, father time, or whatever the saying is, like undefeated. And so eventually our identity is going to catch up with us. And if we don't shift and augment that, then at some point, inevitably, we're going to end up either where we were or there's going to be some sort of side effects that are created because our choices are leading us into an ideal direction.
For sure. And I think that's the misnomer that a lot of people don't get enough of the information on. The peptides, GLP-1s, they're great tools, but you need to be doing the right basics first. Otherwise, it's like a high school athlete buying shoes to run faster when he doesn't do enough running training to begin with. The shoes really don't matter if you're not doing the basic work to improve your speed and improve your performance to begin with. These are meant to optimize the good decisions you're already doing in order to further advance results. They're not meant to replace the foundational work that starts it.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I'm not speaking from any place of knowing. This is simply an assumption. So I'll say that. But I would imagine that the people that are prescribing these things are just handing them out like it's Halloween. And they're seeing an opportunity to make some money on the back end of it. And there's not a thorough enough. I would imagine a lot of people need it, so that's not what it is. But to your point, a coaching and an education of this is not just a magic pill. This is a path, an accelerated path to this place that requires, like you said, doing the right things and some of the foundational elements. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that hasn't been our society's MO to have those conversations when there is a money making opportunity in front of them.
Unfortunately, not for the majority of it, for sure. Most companies are out to try and optimize what the market wants right now, and figuring the easiest way possible to deliver it. And unfortunately, coaching, working with people, that takes time. It takes compensation for whoever's doing the coaching. So it's hard for companies to optimize and scale that. So they just focus on how quickly and effectively can we get product to the customer, and then put the onus on that person to figure out how to do it right. That's one of the areas where we've really optimized for that because we were already doing the coaching and the workout programming to begin with. So we've partnered with a lot of key groups that offer the GLP-1s, offer the peptides, but we provide the coaching and support So they're doing the proper groundwork to get the most effect out of it for their clientele and for ours.
Yeah, I would imagine that if someone is paying attention or they're using sort of society as their influence on their decisions, that it's not going to lead them down sort of the right path. It's interesting that steroids and peptides and all this sort of stuff has become like trendy. I mean, I grew up and came of age in the 90s where someone like Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire, who they were like the devil because they took steroids and then hit a baseball. And now it's like there's YouTubers and 16-year-olds and all these people who are being praised and getting all this attention, and not all of it negative or not a lot of positive attention, because they are, it's like trendy to like inject their butt. Like it's interesting that is like popular in mainstream culture.
Yeah, the looks maxing community is definitely a concerning component of social media now. And I've heard a lot of people who comment on it. It's just like they're pursuing this because they don't want to go through the difficult phase of the teenage transition, not understanding that like you were going to get to that look and that point relatively naturally if you had just waited for your 20s. But instead, they're choosing to try and rush there by overexposing their body to exogenous hormones that have a huge amount of health risks that come with it, especially starting that young for it to achieve something that would have happened with time and proper habits to begin with. If you people underestimate the impact of consistent training over years or decades and what it can do for someone's health and physique.
Yeah. It's the popular YouTuber, I don't even know how to properly say his name, Clavicular, I think is how you say it. So he was notorious for doing exactly what you did, got onto all of these different, I don't know what you would call them, but steroids at a really young age. And I think he's 23, 24, something like that, maybe younger. But now he says that he wants to start having to try, he wants to try to start having kids. And so now he's taking all these other hormones and all, he's injecting himself with all these other things just to get his reproductive system going and back up again. And so there are some really long-term implications. And it's scary that he's at such an early stage of his life.
Mhm. And I think the scarier thing is that he was able to find a doctor willing to provide him with the steroids and testosterone replacements without the education of these are the risks that come with it in the long term. It's unfortunate that not enough of that is being discussed. Testosterone replacement's a big thing. More and more men that are younger are trying to get on it for obvious reasons because of what it has the impact on physique, mental clarity, energy. It is beneficial as someone who found out that their testosterone was too low, and that's the reason why my back was falling apart. It can be life changing, but you need to understand all of the potential risks and effects with it and make an educated decision from there with your doctor, not just because of what an influencer is doing on YouTube.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and push back on this sort of perspective and mindset that I hold if you disagree with it. But it seems like with testosterone specifically, and we'll sort of restrict the conversation to that hormone specifically. If we want to talk about other ones, we can. But it seems like it's probably worth trying all of the other, I don't know what you would call it, holistic, natural ways to sort of generate it, whether it's the precursors or whether it's yerba mate or like whatever, all these different things, rubbing yourself with whatever it is. Like there are some interesting things out there. It's probably worth trying some things before we start just pumping ourselves with endogenous testosterone. Not that's a choice that you don't want to consider, but it seems like once you make that choice that you're sort of stuck with that choice, or you sort of have to live with that choice. And to what your point is, like all of the things that come along with it.
Yeah, and that's the challenge because people don't understand that our hormones are a cascade of different signals until the final stage. And testosterone lands somewhere in the middle of that communication pathway. So if we're fluxing an external source into it, it disrupts every signal prior to that And those signals influence other things beyond just testosterone. And for example, with the fertility aspect, where you're disrupting that because you're telling the body, we have enough testosterone. You don't need to tell the testicles to increase your sperm count, as an example. So there's other areas that it impacts that need to be understood before someone makes choices with this if they've got other things that they want to do in their life. For me at the time, it was, well, I'm essentially at the risk of not being able to function because of how much my back was falling apart. So it's just like, even if I had kids, I couldn't do anything to help take care of them at the time, which was a major issue with our firstborn and reason why I went ahead with the therapy to get better. You should look at some of the other options that naturally can do it if your body allows you to do it. Not everyone's does, and that's the reason why the therapy's there.
Yeah. It's an interesting sort of phenomenon that's happening as all of these options, all of this medicine, technology, whatever you want to call it, things that are becoming available to people. There is an increasingly there's just as much education that's necessary as well, because it used to be, oh, go to the doctor, they'll give you the answer, they have all the answers, mostly because we couldn't have the answer. It was sort of impossible for us to get or to have the answers. But I hear a lot of doctors talking about how they're upset now because patients are coming to their appointments with knowledge and information, and so that's basically on par with what the doctor has. And and a lot of doctors are sort of not enjoying that they're having to raise their game. I think the best ones are enjoying it, but it seems like now there's this need to inform ourselves or educate ourselves that wasn't the that wasn't the norm or the standard before. It was just trust the medicine and trust the doctors and listen to the experts.
Yeah, I mean, it, there is a certain aspect of responsibility to be informed about your own health. Obviously, there's good sources and bad sources on the internet that can lead you astray or get you better prepared for that discussion with your doctor. But also understanding that most doctors don't have a full understanding of the impact of nutrition and what it can do and impact for our health. And understanding that even a lot of aspects of mainstream nutrition has a slightly different skewed focus from what other areas of holistic and naturopathic may have, because a lot of medicine and nutrition looks at what's the minimum needed to not get sick versus what's needed to actually be optimized. One example is protein recommendations, because you'll hear for people who are focused on trying to build muscle, influence strength, and optimize performance, the protein intake tends to be much higher than what the RDA is. And the pushback would be like, well, you don't need that much protein to maintain basic health. It's like, well, I'm not trying to maintain basic health. I'm trying to optimize other areas and components. One of my pushbacks with that is like the RDA for vitamin C is extremely low because it was based on what is needed to prevent scurvy.
Yeah, it's like, what do you need to get across the Atlantic Ocean? No.
Yeah. But we know that taking higher doses of vitamin C up into the 1000% RDA has major impacts on our immune health, other aspects of well being, and it's understood the impact that it has. So there's a difference between what is normal versus what is optimal. The same thing in aspects of monitoring your blood work. I recommend you should be going to the doctor to get basic evaluations when you're well, so you can actually compare later if you're unwell what's actually gone differently and what's truly wrong versus what's actually outside of the margins. Because there are some times where you may come in what's considered normal, but it's low normal, whereas optimal for you was at high normal. Because some of the ideal ranges are very broad.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm glad that I'm coming around onto, and it's great to see people that I care about and love, who I don't ever try and be the zealot who tries to convince people to go vegan or eat more protein or like whatever. I did try to do that, and I'm too weird that I try too much stuff that to try and convince all the people of the things that I'm doing, and just I would lose too many people. I would lose too many relationships. But I say all that because creatine has been something that, like, even what I would call like the normies are coming around to the the value of creatine. And I remember growing up. Yeah, and I remember thinking, "Oh, it's just to make my muscles bigger, but it's just all water weight." And like there was all these sort of negative connotations about it. And even once I got past and started learning about the health benefits that it has on the brain and also on like things like sleep deprivation, it seems like one of those things that like why not? And I'm sure we'll look up in 5 to 10 years and it'll be like people will be treating creatine like how people take their daily multivitamin. But I think that's one of those supplements that is a small input can make a really big impact.
For sure, for sure. And new developments come up with that all the time because we don't there's so many aspects of the body, the different chemicals involved in it, and the impacts that they have that we just don't even know yet. For example, like the GLP-1 pathway was a happy accident of diabetes medication that we discovered had a huge impact on weight, and now that's blowing up. So there's always new developments, new research coming out, and that's a good thing, but it's also important to stay informed so you understand how whatever you're taking works, what the impact of it's going to be, benefits and consequences.
Yeah. I don't think I can get in trouble for giving creatine from to my kids, but I've even been throwing it in their shake. Like I don't tell them because if I tell them, they think that it's all of a sudden yucky. But I've gone a couple of months with them because I think that we have to be proactive with our health, right? It's not something that can just happen on its own because otherwise, if we just go with what society's doing or with what's easy or convenient, I don't think that we're set up to like that's not set up to be longevity minded.
Yeah. I like the saying where one way or another, health is going to become a priority for you, either because you make it a priority preventatively or because it's the only thing that matters now because you're trying to not die.
Right. Yeah. Probably better to think about it when it's coming up early. Are there any other I'll take it any you can take it any sort of way, but are there any other modalities, techniques, technology, certain machines even that you find are working well with your clients or that your clients are enjoying?
The different trackers and things are definitely a big component now. I always tell clients whether it's food journaling, activity tracking, sleep tracking, the more information I have, the better recommendations I can make. That if we hit a some sort of snag, whether it be I'm not losing weight anymore, or I'm exhausted and tired, or I'm not recovering well, the more information I have, the easier it is for me to identify what changes need to be made either in their nutrition, in their sleep routines, in the training in general, because there's different variables that impact that. And if I don't know what's going on in those, I really only guessing at that point. Whereas if I know for exactly what and how much you're eating, I know what the quality of sleep is that you're getting. I know how much movement and steps you're getting outside the gym, and obviously I know what your workout protocol is. It's much easier to pinpoint what we need to change if there's an issue.
Yeah. Tracking has made it a lot easier. I To your point though, it's an internal sort of decision because even I find myself not wanting to know. I don't want to know because I don't know. I don't want to know how many calories the Oreos were, especially when there's. I think, oh, I start with one mini pack, but then ends up as two mini packs, and it's like there's an internal battle that I need to fight. So, anyways, they do help, and I've recently enjoyed utilizing AI to tell me the amount of calories and macros and all that sort of stuff because there was so much friction before in having that information, but now there isn't, and so now it's just whether or not we want to look ourselves in the mirror or not.
Yeah. And it's really great because there's other components of physiology that people don't appreciate when we're trying to do major weight loss, where if we're really cutting calories, we're really trying to push our movement through formal workouts, the body will start adapting by not making you move as much as you would have during your day to day practices. So, having the step counters, the heart rate trackers, things of that nature, so we can really see what's going on during your workday. Are you lethargically sagging in your chair when you used to be up and bouncing? Maybe going to the water cooler 4 or 5 times a shift, but now you're not moving at all. Like that's a big difference maker metabolically that we have to address.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've noticed, and I don't know if comes back to education as well, is that, okay, I want to start working out and eating better or eating less is usually what it starts out as, like eating less calories and more workouts. But then my body is not given the right sort of nutrients, both from a sort of a macro level, but then also I would imagine that the micronutrients, I'm not paying attention to those and I'm depleting and running out of all those. So my body ends up breaking down, and 3, 4 weeks into a program, I end up just getting sick and exhausted and worn out. And then it takes another X amount of weeks to try and even get up the courage to try again. And so it goes through this feast or famine, at least a metaphorical feast and famine cycle in terms of health, that I would imagine other people sort of go through if they don't have the support and education around them.
100%. One of the biggest challenges in a weight loss program is managing what we call systemic fatigue, because cutting your calories creates systemic fatigue because there's not enough to truly energize the body for the day. That's the reason how we're losing weight, because we're forcing the body to go into its reserves to provide that energy source. But now we're also adding more movement and physical demands on it that have the demand during the action, but also the recovery aspect of it. So all those come together and compound where we want it to be just enough that we're seeing weight loss, but not so much that it's compounding so heavily that it's impacting our day to day, where all of a sudden we're struggling to get out of bed, we're avoiding activities during work or home. When we would be up and about, we're choosing to just lounge in our chair, and we're starting to get burnt out with our food. None of that is conducive to being able to be successful with the program and seeing the goals achieved with your weight loss pursuit.
Yeah, I think it's, again, coming back to the value of education and support and community, because when I do it, and I do it on my own, and I have my own sort of challenges with having a coach or a trainer, that I have yet to get over. But for me, when I go out there, the first couple of days I go balls to the walls and I'm just gung ho and it feels good in the moment, and then the next day, or really usually it's the 2 days after, is when I feel it. And I would imagine that having a coach or a trainer or someone to sort of walk through that can help maintain or sort of ease into some of those things, because that's a big part of sustaining it too, is just not crapping out and being able to continue on.
Yeah, and that's one of the areas that we can really try and focus on with our programming and coaching. A lot of programs out there are set upon some like a 30, 60, 90-day hardcore transformation challenge to make your body change. And they work, but the problem is that the demands of that aren't conducive long term to keep up. So you have two modes to basically operate: this super challenging hard mode that's difficult to keep going, and the mode that got you in trouble in the first place. And people struggle after that transition on what am I supposed to do now? Because I can't keep doing this because I'll kill myself, or something will get hurt, or I'll get sick because it's just too demanding on the body and systems start suffering. But what I was doing before wasn't good for me either. What am I supposed to do now? So, what we focus on for people is, rather than having them completely alter everything and go super intense, we look at kind of the minimum effective dose of change. What can we change to still see progress with your weight loss and your physique changes, but small enough that you can keep doing it for a very extended period of time, if not forever? So, 2 to 3 days a week of strength training, 30 minutes, is more than enough to start seeing physical changes in your muscle structure. Daily movement, whatever type of movement you want to do, whether it's step tracking, formalized cardio, dancing, doesn't matter. Your choice. Let's build on that little by little. And then nutritional changes, optimizing better choices, starting with your proteins, then your vegetables, and then we can pick what your carbohydrate is, rather than going carbs first and filling up on that and missing out on the other nourishment. But we provide the information and we have the client pick what are the 2 or 3 things you can put into action this week. We start with those. They master those. Then we pick the next two or three things, or we coach on what the obstacles are and being successful with those.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest challenge that I've had, and again, it's always trying to do it on my own, is the timeline for results, right? It's like you put in a lot of effort and the demand on the system, the systemic demands are really high. So there's not a lot of sustainability there. So you see fast results, but they don't sustain themselves. Or you push the timeline out a little bit and it takes a little longer. So you've got to be in it and engage a little longer. But it seems like when I've been able to do that, the results are a little more sustainable too.
Yeah, and that's the idea is we want to make changes that can actually stick rather than be so severe and so rapid that yes, we see progress, but it's not in a way that we can keep doing where the slightest challenge in life is going to completely disrupt it and take us off the rails with it. Whereas if you just work on basic habits, what's the minimum amount of time needed for your workouts to see change, moderate leveraging of your nutrition that is going to set you up better and better, but we just stack one success after the other. That sees progress, but it keeping them in charge of the choices of what they change makes it more sustainable because there's no resistance of like, well, I have to do this, but I don't want to do it. It's these are going to be the best options. What do you want to do right now?
Yeah. Great stuff, John. Appreciate you coming back. I've got two questions. First is if people want to find out about you, come hang out with you in Arizona or whatever, where's the best place for people to connect and find out more?
Website lifestyleperformancetraining.com. We do both in person work in Tempe, Arizona, but we do have online programs as well. You can find out more there. Follow us on our social. We're on Facebook and Instagram primarily, and then I do a weekly Q&A. I do it live on Facebook, and then I upload the recordings to YouTube every week.
Amazing. We'll link all that up for you guys as well. And last question, John. I asked you it last time, but I'll ask you again, and maybe it's the same answer. But in your opinion, what is the definition of modern masculinity?
Modern masculinity to me is maturity, selflessness, and being able to pursue goals, but also appreciate the people that are helping you get there along the way rather than using them.